Well, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of our shooting program. We're so glad to have you with us this week. Yes, friends, it's cold all over America as we speak. In fact, we're going to shoot an ice block here in a moment. Even here in northwest Louisiana, it was 12 degrees out here in the country last night. So, yeah, it's a little nicer this afternoon. Believe me, it's real pretty, but we do sympathize for those folks up in the northeast that have had a couple of feet of snow. I tell you what, that's an awful lot to contend with. Well, we have a great show for you. We have some things I think you're going to find interesting. The judge has some great information for us, and we have a candidate for the Senate here in Louisiana for our national Senate that we're going to be talking with a little later on in the program. So listen, just stay with us here because we're about to get started. Let's let another shooting show begin. Let's core bind this block of ice. How about that? Let's core bind it. Tell you what, probably some of you'd like to do this with the ice in your driveway, wouldn't you? I wouldn't recommend it. Yes. Well, friends, we're going to look at a really fun handgun today, and a very slick handgun for that matter, slick as far as finish. This is a Ruger Vaquero, and this is the 4 5/8 inch barrel, and this is really a pretty and nice package from Ruger. And we're not necessarily trying to promote Ruger handguns because, as you've heard me say in the past, Ruger's never bought 10 cents worth of advertising on our program, but we're not going to overlook the quality of their product because they really do make some very fine firearms. This particular Vaquero, and we've had Vaqueros on the program in the past, but this one's a little different because it's in the 4440 caliber. Now, a lot of you may not be familiar with the 4440, but the 4440 may in fact be when you talk about cartridges that actually won the West, well, probably the 4440 would be a closer candidate to that than the 45 Colt, and for this reason. One, it was certainly a powerful black powder cartridge for a handgun or for a carbine like the 73 or so Winchester, the early lever action Winchesters, but the reason was convenience. It wasn't quite as strong from what I've seen as far as black powder loadings as the 45 Colt. Wasn't quite as strong in a handgun, at least that's the figures I have seen, but it was interchangeable with the lever action carbine. So what you could have is your handgun and your lever action, your Winchester, shooting the same cartridge. It was logistically simpler because when you went in the store, you only bought one kind of cartridge and you didn't have to worry about, well, do I have cartridges for my handgun, also for my rifle? Well, it's really not that terrifically powerful a rifle cartridge, of course, but within its useful range, it was certainly adequate for its intended purpose. The rifle had a considerably longer range, say, than the handgun. What we've seen with factory load ammunition, we have some Remington factory loads here, and they are downloaded because some of the old guns out there that will still, that are still in working order, that someone might buy a box of cartridges and shoot in some of these old guns, they don't want to blow them up, so they're loaded very mildly. And what we're seeing is I believe a 200 grain bullet. These happen to be soft points, moving along at about 820 or so feet per second. See, not a whole heck of a lot of recoil. See, just not much. Very, very pleasant to shoot. In fact, you don't have as much energy here, say, as the 45 ACP. Now, when you put it over in a rifle, and there are some rifles being imported now, I believe Navy Arms and maybe some others are importing rifles made in 4440 caliber. Now, why is this? And of course, these guns are very expensive, typically, these imported rifles. The reason is cowboy shooting. I think everyone has been surprised by the popularity of the cowboy shooting matches, and of course, you've seen us cover some of these things on the program here in past times. We're going to do some more because it is certainly so much fun. I think the reason for the popularity of the cowboy shooting matches as much as anything is the fun factor. The fun quotient is way up there. You don't have the seriousness or the intensity, say, that you would in the IPSC match, because believe me, you have people in IPSC matches that are very, very serious. Not to say you don't have some serious shooters in the cowboy matches, because you do, but you just don't have the level of technical achievement or whatever else. You know, we're not talking about scope guns. We're talking about things that people used 100+ years ago. So it's much less pressure involved. It's just more fun for the average person. The average shooter can go to an IPSC match, and I would certainly encourage any shooting match that any of us can go to, because when you're shooting, you're gaining in your experience, you're gaining in your technique. But an average shooter can feel very intimidated by going to some of the more advanced IPSC type matches. But an average shooter can go to a cowboy match, and hey, who cares? You know, if you got on boots and spurs and whatever else you want to wear, you can take a single action, go out and have fun. And again, one of the neat things about this gun, of course, this would be, a lot of people would want to use this in conjunction with a rifle for a cowboy type shooting match. Although the 4440 is really a nice cartridge in its own right. It shoots essentially the same size bullet as a 44 Special or 44 Magnum, same size bullet now. Didn't say case, didn't say power, the same size bullet. In my research, and my understanding is the original 4440 bullet was actually 427 thousandths. The 44 Special is 429 thousandths, but I really don't think that's enough to really worry about. Some of the tolerances in the old guns were quite a few more thousandths off than that. It's just some of the ways they were made. But it is very pleasant to shoot. Again, we'll take another shot with it. You just don't have very much, say it's just not too terribly much. And one of the neat things, this is a stainless steel gun. And yeah, I'm going to try and catch these cases, because believe me, 4440 cases, brass is not cheap. One of the neat things about this Ruger, this is a stainless steel gun, but as you can see, I saw earlier from the picture, and you can see the sun reflecting off this gun today, stainless can be polished to where it actually looks like nickel. And it really does. The Ruger people should be very proud of their polish work on these guns. It is first rate. Well, to take a look, let's show the difference between a regular Ruger single action, which this is my old Super Blackhawk with adjustable sights. Let's take a look at some of the finer differences between the Vaquero model and the regular old Blackhawk or Super Blackhawk models. Now, friends, see, you can actually see yourself there in the finish on this Ruger. It is so nice, in fact. And of course, the way a single action revolver works, and we know this gun's empty, let's go ahead and check it. This is how you load it and unload it. Of course, you put your bullet in here, and to bring your empty case out, just push this plunger on the side. That's what these things are for right here. You line it up with a hole there and you push it on out. And of course, to take the gun down, you just mash this little spring here and push the base pin over. And really, I wish that Ruger would, somebody's making a cylinder pin here that has a little Allen screw or something that will lock it in place, because on some of these Rugers, some people hand load them on up to the point of some very strong loads, and sometimes this base pin will slip out. You got this little spring here, say spring loaded pin here, and I really wish that Ruger would consider offering an option, a little pin here that will lock itself in place on the barrel, or put a little dimple there on the barrel, something so it can be locked down firmly, because these guns are really strong, and that does sometimes happen. Not very often, normally with a very powerful load, but it does happen. And yes, there's some outfit, I think in Idaho somewhere, that's offering a replacement pin for these things. And really, that's about the only thing that normally will happen to these Ruger single actions. They have really proven to be rugged and durable over these many years that Ruger has been making them. Anyway, and again, we know this gun's unloaded. Of course, we have a safe area. If something happened, we did have one in the chamber. But the way a single action works, of course, it has to be cocked for every shot. Now, nothing will happen when you pull the trigger. You have to cock that hammer manually for something to happen. And this is when the old timers, or certainly in the old cowboy shows, when people used to twirl their guns, they were using single action revolvers. And I personally do not agree with twirling a gun. One, we never, under any circumstance, we never touch that trigger. We don't put our finger in the trigger guard unless we're ready to shoot the gun. I mean, there's just no reason to do it unless we're ready to shoot. And that way, if your gun is always lined up at a target before you touch a trigger, you're never going to have an accidental discharge, because there's just no reason to touch that trigger. And I personally think that twirling handguns is one of the worst possible things that has ever been showed to anybody else. I don't, if you're going to twirl something, get a hula hoop, do something, but, why twirl a revolver? To me, it's ridiculous. Anyway, looking at our Super Blackhawk here, you can see, obviously, the differences in the two guns. One, the Ruger has a frame that resembles the old Colt single-action revolvers, whereas the single-action Ruger, you have a much more pronounced hump on the frame. Of course, this gun has adjustable sights, also has very fine sights on the front of the gun, whereas this is the old Colt-type front sight. And yes, they did make it like this for looks because they wanted it to appeal to the old cowboy-type shooters, but there are differences. Of course, you have a fluted barrel cylinder, whereas your Super Blackhawks typically have an unfluted cylinder, and these barrel lengths anyway. You have a different trigger guard. The Super Blackhawk, of course, has a squared-off trigger guard back here, and the Vaqueros have a rounded trigger guard regardless of caliber. So there are a number of differences, but I'll tell you what, this is such a nice package. It handles it. It comes in and out of a holster so easy because it is so slick. Really a nice package. All right, friends, just looking here, you can carry 6 rounds in a Ruger cylinder safely, and here's why. There's no firing pin here on this hammer. The firing pin is spring-loaded here in the frame. This is called a transfer bar, and this has been in use on a number of guns for many years, but see, until that hammer is cocked, the transfer bar, see the firing pin here? The transfer bar does not come up in place, and what it does, when I say transfer bar, it transfers the energy of the hammer to the firing pin. That's what it's for. And when the hammer is down on these guns, see the bar drop down out of place, and there's a detent here or a place here in the hammer where the hammer does not contact the firing pin in any way until that it's pulled back and the transfer bar here comes up into place. And then when you pull the trigger, it releases the hammer, and when you release the trigger, of course, the transfer bar comes back down out of place. So you can carry these guns safely with 6 rounds in the chamber. The old style single actions, such as the Colt single action Army, the reproductions from Cimarron, from EMF, from Navy Arms, all these other companies that make a reproduction single action should only be carried with 5 rounds or an empty chamber underneath that hammer. Because on the old style guns, you just had a little what they called a safety notch there, and that was just to prevent the hammer, the gun from going off if it slipped out of from under your thumb. They should never be carried with a round underneath that hammer on the old style guns. The old Rugers that used to be made like the old style before 1973, you can send your gun to Ruger and have it converted to a safe transfer bar action. They'll even send you the parts back. So for you collectors who want to keep your guns original but still want to shoot them and carry them, you can always convert them back. So anyway, so much for all that. That's how they work.
Get your hands off that gun, bow, or fishing rod. Holding onto your equipment while you're going through the woods or climbing a hill is fatiguing and possibly dangerous. The versatile Tri-Tote all-season carrier is easy to use. You never have to drill a hole in your fine gun stock. And the Tri-Tote can be set up for your specific needs in a jiffy. Just follow the illustrated instructions and free demo video enclosed. There you are, hands-free, yet ready to shoot in an instant. Hunting and fishing have never been more enjoyable. With Tri-Tote, your equipment is secure and your hands are free to support yourself or carry other gear. How did you ever get along without Tri-Tote? Make this year's hunting and fishing the best ever. To order your Tri-Tote at this special TV price, call toll-free 1-800-231-1443. That's 1-800-231-1443.
Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
So, Johnny, how are you feeling? You actually look a little bit better today.
Well, thank you. Yes, I've recovered very well from my cold and flu. I think everybody I know down here has either had the flu, getting over the flu, or is getting the flu. I mean, that's just what it feels. But I tell you what, our Health Club products will definitely help you bounce back quicker. And that's been the thing. You know, some of these things just seem to drag on for a long time. And certainly with the cold weather and just recently I woke up 6 o'clock in the morning because I was about to freeze. The electricity was off. You know, it was 15 degrees. The furnace was down. My electric blanket was down. It was cold, but thankfully I didn't get sick from that. Friends, our Health Club products are absolutely among the very finest in the industry today. And you can find out about these products. You can call and get them and let yourself feel better. Let yourself go through life doing better, feeling better, almost going back in time. That's how it feels. You absolutely regain some of that lost energy and lost vitality that you might have had in years past just from eating healthier, taking our supplements. It's absolutely wonderful. Give us a call, 1-800-895-7916. We'll have someone get back to you as quickly as possible. Our Health Club is such an important thing, one, for this program, but friends, important for you. Don't waste time. Let's do it today. For Health Club information, give us a call, 1-800-895-7916. Leave your name, address, and phone number. Someone will get back to you as soon as possible. Friends, this is such a wonderful thing. Do it for yourselves today.
Now, friends, when I was talking about a 4440, on your right here is a 4440 cartridge. On the left is a 44 Magnum, which a lot of us are familiar with. The bullet is of the same diameter, but the cases differ quite a bit. The old 4440 black powder case is actually a little bit longer. The case now, what I'm talking about, the case is the brass part here, is a little bit longer than the 44 Magnum. But it doesn't have quite as great a diameter. And let's look at an empty here, and I think you'll be able to see it. Here's the 4440 case on the right again, and the 44 Magnum case on the left. And you can see the 4440 is tapered a little bit. It's a little bit of a bottleneck, not a lot, but a little. But I think you can see how thin this old black powder case is, and see how much thicker the 44 Magnum case is. The hole is the same side, but the outer diameter is considerably different. See, there's quite a bit. This Magnum case here under my thumb is quite a bit thicker than the old black powder case. Now, this is also something to watch in reloading for these cartridges, because if you get very rough with the rim on this 4440, you're going to split the case, because or at least the neck there of the case, because it is so thin. You have to be a little more careful with it. Now, they can be reloaded, but it just doesn't have near the heavy case construction that this 44 Magnum case on the left does. Now, friends, one thing I was concerned about in this 4440 gun, realized there are some old Colt 4440s out there that and some other types that do not have near the strength of this Ruger, but this is a 44 Magnum bullet, and I tried this a little earlier, and no, a 44 Magnum will not chamber in this Ruger 4440. So I was really glad to see that. Honestly, didn't know, because the cases are so close in size. But no, it will not chamber in this gun. That's something we should never, ever do, is chamber a cartridge in a gun that the gun was not designed for. You can hurt yourself or blow up the gun. But I was glad to see that, that it won't, the 44 Magnum will not chamber. Probably this Ruger would take it, but there are some others that wouldn't. So that's something that I was very pleased to see. All right, friends, let's go ahead and load a 4440 cartridge in this gun. We'll bring it on around. I think we can see it coming up here. There it is. And friends, let me remind you, for instructional purposes, you want that target a little blurred. You want this part back here, this rear sight, a little blurred, but the front sight has got to be clear. Well, let's take our shot there and see what it looks like. Along about right about there. Sight works. Well, friends, some of you might be asking why we want to go back in time as far as technology. But believe me, this is an older technology made from the very finest materials, and with the aid of certainly our modern technological computers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all most modern manufacturing techniques. Certainly, you know, having fun with a firearm is, to me, reason enough for having one, because when we can have a firearm and go out and have fun with it, we're going to shoot it more often, we're going to become more familiar with it. we're going to know more about it. And you know, friends, we have got to reach, those of us who are firearms enthusiasts, have got to reach millions more people in America who don't know much about firearms and say, wait a minute, you know, these things have a tremendous number of uses. Certainly the most important of which is to protect our own lives. And believe me, just like the judge's little wooden piece there that says, I don't call 911, believe me, if you're in a real emergency, if you're under attack by another human being, if you're being robbed or whatever, if you're being attacked by a group of people, you won't have time to call 911. You won't have time to call your neighbor or your boyfriend or your husband or your whoever, whether you be a man or a woman. Certainly in the case of a man, I hope he calls somebody other than, well, anyway, moving right along. The point is, you need to be able to depend on yourself as far as being able to defend yourself and your home. And what better way to do it than get out and have fun with a fire? Yes, they are. Well, let's see about that plate. Yes. So how about the Ruger Vaquero in 4440?
You know, friends, speaking of cold weather, here's a picture of the judge and his wife on a recent trip, their trip to Idaho, and I believe that he has gained a new concept, new appreciation for cold weather. That's them on the snowmobile out there. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you're enjoying our program. We are so pleased to be coming to you, and we're so happy with the growth of the Outdoor Channel. By the time you see this, because we're shooting this typically just about a week in advance of the first time it airs on the network, we will have been to, how good a time you think we'll have at the SHOT Show, huh? How good a time you think we had at the SHOT Show, huh?
Well, you talking about the last one or the next one?
Well, the one that we will have been to by the time they see this.
Oh, we'll have had a fantastic ball.
Yeah, we'll have had a great time. Judge
You'll
and I
probably have won a match.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We're entered into one of the gun writers match. We don't qualify as gun writers. We're certainly gun video press, but we'll see how we come out on that. Sponsored by, I think, Mossberg and Smith & Wesson and Tasco. I think Marlin has an interest in it, so that'll be. See if we get some tape footage of that, huh? I'd just be tickled if you won the pistol match.
I bet you would be. I would be too. Well, Johnny, we've got a lot of things to talk about today. Louisiana. Louisiana's got two Democrat senators. One of them is retiring, and lo and behold, we have a gun rights enthusiast that is already announced for that position.
Who will be seen in another spot during the show today, in fact.
Well, all right, but he's been on this show before. When we had
That's
that
true.
gun rights rally down in Baton
that's
Rouge.
true.
He gave an interesting talk. That's Woody Jenkins. I first met Woody a little over 20 years ago when he was a delegate to the Louisiana Constitutional Convention. He was on the Declaration of Rights Committee, and that committee made the mistake of copying the Second Amendment to the Constitution to the federal Constitution as the gun rights provision in the Louisiana Constitution. And I objected to that because of the confusion of the militia.
Mm-hmm.
And so they rewrote it, and Woody had a great hand in doing it. Woody talked to us not long ago. I've always enjoyed his analogies. He says there are 4 boxes that protect American citizens. There's the soapbox. Now, I guess that's what we're on now. We're on soapbox. And then there's a ballot box when you elect people. You got the jury box when you try to convict them. And when all else fails, there's a cartridge box. Now, Woody is a candidate for the United States Senate. I can personally vouch for his absolute reliability on the firearms issue. I strongly recommend that any listeners we have, any viewers I keep calling them listeners.
Well, hopefully they're listening too.
Any viewers that we have in Louisiana, vote for Woody. And if you want any of Woody's campaign literature, let me know, because I'll be sure it gets to you. The main thing he could use are some contributions, and he can get those from anywhere in the country. If you're firearms oriented, Woody
That's
is
true.
your man. remember that Steve Stockman is probably the foremost voice we have in the United States House of Representatives now. He replaced
Jack Brooks.
Jack Brooks, who was chairman of the House Judiciary Committee when the infamous crime bill went through. Steve has voted in our direction on every occasion. Says he wouldn't be there except for the gun owners of America. I can tell you that Woody Jenkins would be a Steve Stockman in the United States Senate.
You know, Judge, the interesting point here, the Senate is where we really now, the House of Representatives is in pretty fair shape in some areas, but the Senate's where we need some work, isn't it?
Well, we need some work in both areas. GOA said that we improved from a C- to a C in the last elections. True, we got some new committee chairmen and so forth. We still haven't gotten the repeal of the crime bill or the repeal of the gun ban up to a vote in the House. It's been promised, but it hadn't come up. The Learning Channel was on last night talking about militias.
Really?
And they tried to tie the militias into the Oklahoma City bombing, and they did it just a little bit too far, in my opinion. I'm wondering when the Montana militia are going to file a suit against that channel for this libel.
Well, you know, that is interesting. I heard something else recently on the news again. You know, the organized media, they're so blatant. The news media from the major broadcast centers is so blatant in what they try and put over on us regarding militias, regarding trying to vilify us as gun owners. They'll go to any lengths at all, I guess.
Any question about that? Incidentally, Louisiana Shooting Association having its annual meeting on January 21st, which is Sunday. On the day before that, and they've asked me to put a plug for them on this. I don't know how many viewers we have in Louisiana. On the day before that, there will be a shooting fair from noon until 5 p.m. And that means spending the night in Alexandria, and they've arranged overnight accommodations at the facilities that the Wildlife and Fisheries Commission has for $2 a night.
So that's
I want you to know, boy, that's something. Olympic shooting will be discussed, demonstrated. Also, they'll talk about how you can get M1 rifles from the government.
They're still available, aren't they?
They are
Through
still
the
available.
Department of
Not
Civilian,
very
Director of
easily,
Civilian Marksmanship.
But
yeah.
you know, we did slip a provision in one of the appropriations bills that stopped the feds from destroying those rifles. Gun Owners of America is setting up a war chest for the elections this fall. I know that some of you are tired of hearing me talk about elections, but that's where the life of this thing is. And that organization deserves your support. Larry Pratt, the executive director of it, thanked me for the publicity I've tried to give his organization, wrote me a nice letter, and I'm going to see him at the SHOT Show. They will be there. And you should make your war chest donations, what we call last year the Christmas Fund, to the Gun Owners of America, because they put it to good use. If it were not for the Gun Owners of America, Steve Stockman would not be in the House of Representatives. And that's what Steve Stockman himself says. And the NRA, dadgummum, you know, I love the NRA, but at the same time, they irritate me. They endorsed Jack Brooks after he'd put the crime bill out and after he had let the gun ban get stuck in it. And NRA said, well, we have to support him because if he's not elected, we'll have Chuck Schumer as chairman of the House House Judiciary.
That's taking
Committee.
the lesser of two evils. How about not taking evil at all?
That's right, not taking
You know,
either one,
just
and
don't
that's
take
what we
evil at
got.
all.
We didn't get either one of them.
You know, friends, all of us as shooting enthusiasts should be subscribing to Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. 3 big issues monthly with literally thousands and thousands of firearms bargains. Give them a call, 1-800-345-6923, a very inexpensive subscription price. Again, 1-800-345-6923. Subscribe today.
Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You know, friends, it's rare in any field of manufacture that one particular company has a clear-cut advantage over the others. Well, in this case, it's Corbin Ammunition, Corbin Bullet Company, because they make the best handgun, long gun, and even some specialty caliber ammunition that's been real hard to get in the past. If you really want your handgun or rifle to perform at their absolute best, you need to find some Corbin ammunition. For information on where you can get Corbin, information on their product line, call them. Corbin Bullet Company, 1-800-626-7266. Again, give them a call. It's a free call, 1-800-626-7266. Trust me on this one. Corbin is the best there is.
The last issue of Gun Owners of America monthly publication, and it's a good publication. If you join Gun Owners of America, you'll get it. They have a rundown on each of the principal, what they consider to be the principal Republican presidential candidates' position on gun control.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did they cut them up. They said Dole, he's responsible for the Brady bill passing.
Without Dole's support, it would not have passed, would it?
Well, without Dole sitting up there and agreeing to a unanimous consent when only he and the Democratic majority leader were standing on the floor of the Senate, it would not have passed. They had already filibustered it and won, and then Dole let it go in. Dole also urged Clinton to sign the crime bill with a gun ban in it. He agreed to vote on repealing the gun ban and then asked for unanimous consent to prohibit putting assault weapons amendments in the terrorism bill. He supported Clinton's efforts to search apartments in Chicago without warrants.
That's a no-no.
He voted for the terror package. It included an increase in the BATF budget, that's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Those
budget.
people that brought you Ruby Ridge and brought you Waco.
That's absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
It has a provision in it to allow the military to enforce civilian law, violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, or an amendment of the Posse Comitatus Act, and exactly what our founding fathers feared. They didn't want a standing army because they thought that it was a danger to civilian government. That same bill allows wiretaps against anyone who even visits someone who has a wiretap order out. Now, how do you know when you come over to my house that there isn't a wiretap order existing for me? I don't know it. And if you even visit it, they can wiretap your phone without any further doing.
Well, what essentially we have here is they would just wiretap anybody they wanted to.
That's exactly correct. They wiretap anybody they wanted to.
You know,
that's Dole's position, and I can't understand for the life of me how Dole is the leading candidate for the presidential nomination for the Republicans.
You know, it's ridiculous to think that it's none of their business what you and I talk about within the confines of our home on the phone. I really don't think it's their business. You know, neither one of us have ever had a history of doing anything that to the detriment of this country. You know, what business is it of theirs? None.
Absolutely none. And then they talked about Phil Graham. Well, he voted to pass a crime bill that had the gun ban in it. He voted to recognize the heroic action of the BATF at Waco.
Oh, boy.
He introduced a bill to recognize the heroic action
I hate to hear that about old Phil.
of BATF at Waco. He voted for the terror package and exactly the same things that I mentioned about Dole. And on top of that, he voted to give Gorbachev $50,000 from the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee for coming and speaking in the United States.
Boy, that's what we needed was Gorbachev going to speak to us. Isn't that right?
What we really needed was taking $50,000 it might have gone to help elect Woody Jenkins to the Senate out of the Senatorial Campaign Committee and giving it to Gorbachev. I think that's absurd. And then Buchanan. Well, we had Buchanan on the show last week or the week before?
A couple of weeks ago.
Buchanan put it very simply. And I think it's all in one sentence. He said the Second Amendment guarantees the fundamental individual right to own and possess firearms. He said that right is a personal and individual right the Constitution says shall not be infringed. And this is a direct quote. If I'm elected president, it won't be.
Meaning it will not be infringed.
That's correct.
Well, good for Pat. I was certainly impressed with him. He said so many great things. Our comments we got back from viewers was just excellent about Pat. Honestly, I'd never heard the man talk that much. He talked about other things like on Crossfire and all, but I never had really had a chance to have him say directly on these issues anyway what he felt.
Well, you know what the mainstream media does. They follow Clinton around, and every time he burps, they stick it on national television, and they don't give Buchanan's positions anything,
nothing.
any position at all.
You know why they won't? Because they're afraid people might like it.
This issue of Gun Owners America talks about compromise. Never justified when principle is involved. That's P-R-I-N-C-I-P-L-E. Principle is involved. And that's their position, and I support them on that. We have an NRA fax that came in today. Yesterday, I don't know when it came in. It's my last one. And they say that Newt Gingrich says that we're going to vote on the gun ban repeal this year. He says that, he also talks about it in his book, Renew America. He says that we can pass it. He says he thinks Clinton will veto it. Of course he will.
Right, Clinton.
But it will give us a head count on who is and who isn't. Incidentally, there's a black market in some of the guns that are banned. The police can buy them for about $1,400 a piece. That's the Steyr AUGs. Police departments get them for about $1,700. But they can sell them on the black market for $4,000, and guess who's ordering them and then selling them on the black market?
You don't mean that there are dishonest police in this country. You don't mean it.
According to the December 30th, 1995 issue of the Arizona Republic, several Phoenix police officers are under investigation for falsifying documents in order to buy 65 of the Steyr AUGs so they could sell them after they got them, so they could sell them and get $4,000 a piece for them.
Well, first of all, the point there is, one, that there are, see, the police cannot always be trusted. I mean, they cannot always be trusted to obey the law, or certainly to do right. That's why we cannot ever put our faith completely in any governmental agency. And the other thing is the Steyrs are okay, but $4,000? I mean, I always thought $1,400 was a little high for them. I mean, they're all right.
I thought that was outrageous for them. We got a Senate election coming up. Packwood has resigned from the Senate. We've got two candidates out there. One of them is anti-gun, one of them is pro-gun, and it's in Oregon, and that's where you mail in your ballots. You don't even go to a voting place. I think that's a strange system. But as long as they're doing it, they've got an anti-gun Representative Don, W-Y-D-E-N, Wyden, a Democrat. It's a January 30th mail-in election. And there is a Republican, Gordon Smith. He's the, I think he's been the head, the president pro tem or the majority leader in their Senate. Anyhow, he is a pro-gun candidate. And please, you people out in Oregon, give us some votes for Gordon Smith. And it's a mail-in ballot. Don't forget to mail your ballots in. Well, people in Fairfax County, Virginia, are upset.
Why?
Well, they're upset because there's a little weekly newspaper out there called The Connection, and The Connection has been publishing lists of all the people who have applied for concealed weapons permits.
Well, why would they want to do that? Why would they?
I don't know why they want to do it. One lady whose name was published had her son's car broken in front of a house that same night. The NRA heading is, "It's the criminals, stupid." Why don't they publish the list of the violent criminals? They haven't done it. Incidentally, in Fairfax County, Virginia, local politicians are trying to repeal the state's new right to carry law or prohibit people from getting permits to carry concealed weapons, and they're introducing ordinances to keep them from carrying concealed weapons in county-owned buildings, whatever those are. There's a public meeting. It's already been held. I don't know how it's come out. It was on January 6th on Saturday at 9 a.m. And I hope that the citizens of Fairfax County, Virginia, appeared and let themselves be heard. Illinois and Texas seminars. There are grassroots seminars in Illinois and Texas. Remember, these are NRA-sponsored seminars trying to teach you something about political life, political facts, and how to go about helping your candidates get elected. I went to their seminar here. I didn't think really that I had learned a lot, but then I've been
You've been
dabbling.
at this just a little bit longer.
I've been
than,
dabbling in politics for 25, 30, maybe 40 years. Let me leave you with two thoughts. Steve Stockman, wonderful candidate. Let's get behind him and make sure he gets reelected to the House. Buchanan is a magnificent presidential candidate. We need to elect Gordon Smith in Oregon to the United States Senate, and in November we need to elect Woody Jenkins to the United States Senate. And those of you who are Republicans and in Louisiana, you can go to the Republican convention in New Orleans and you can vote to make Woody the official endorsed Republican candidate for the United States Senate.
When's that going to be?
It's about the 27th of the month.
It's going to be in New Orleans.
It's in New Orleans. You got to be a registered Republican to do it. You pay $35 and you're an official delegate. And it takes you away from smoke-filled rooms. Mm-hmm. Any Republican can be a delegate to the convention. If he's interested enough to go and to pay $35, and believe me, his room in New Orleans will cost him more than that. You can have your voice about who the Republican Party nominates. I guess that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with more of the same.
You know, Carrie, I think it's as important for you ladies to know how to use these firearms as it is for us men. But you know, there's something else. We can have firearms for defense of our homes and certainly for sport, but we also need information.
Yes, I agree. I think the New American Magazine is the best source of information available in this country.
Well, I would certainly agree. The New American Magazine is the truth and nothing but the truth. And friends, if you would like to know what is really going on in this country and around the world, if you want, in fact, the truth, well, you need to get the New American Magazine. So here's how to do it.
You can get the New American by calling 1-800-727-TRUE-TRUE. And those numbers, of course, are 1-800-727-8783. The New American, $22 for a 6-month subscription. It comes twice a month.
Now, friends, with your new Shootin' Show subscription, they will also send you a free copy of what the United Nations is bringing to all of us. So this is very important. Subscribe today. You know, friends, in times like these, which indeed are strange times, we certainly need our firearms, but we also need the information about what's really going on. Order today.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
If you are a boater or a birder, if you ever carry a camera, Bi-Tote is for you. It is the most comfortable binocular and camera carrier on the market today. And its all-elastic quick change feature makes it possible to switch from one piece of equipment to another without missing a beat. If you think that carrying binoculars or cameras is a pain in the neck, try Bi-Tote. For the first time, your equipment will feel almost weightless, And you'll be free of that annoying swinging and bouncing which is hard on your body as well as the equipment, especially when you're negotiating rough terrain or on a pitching boat. One hand for you, one hand for the boat, and bi-toed for your binoculars or camera. They'll be ready for you instantly, held firmly in position. They're always there, not buried in a locker or other out-of-the-way place. And the bi-toed is totally adjustable for a custom fit. All necessary adapters and complete instructions are included with your bi-toed. How did you ever get along without it?
Well, friends, we want to make a point today because you know what? We certainly have on today's program Woody Jenkins, who is a very fine, looks like going to be a serious contender for one of our senators from here in Louisiana, and a very pro-gun person. And friends, let me tell you what, we have got to start supporting and electing pro-gun people. Now think about it, because if we don't get them in office, a lot of us have stayed away from the polls. We have not been involved when we so desperately needed to be involved. Because here's what will happen. You know, this is your basic old AR-15 / Colt Sporter that so many of us are familiar with. I have a 30-round magazine that I bought. It is surplus military. Now see, we were trusted with surplus military type equipment for hundreds of years. I say hundreds, from the very beginning of when our country was founded. But see what has, this gun was available up from the factory to civilians up through part of last year until the Clintonians and some of these knuckleheads in Washington decided that we didn't need, you and I as citizens could not be trusted. That's what it's all about. They said, you know, we can't be trusted by owning these guns, by being able to have guns that are semi-automatic. No, we're not trustworthy all of a sudden. Well, wait a minute, friends. It's not us who are not trustworthy. It's these people in Washington who want to take these away. Now then, to show you how lunatic some of their ideas are, this gun has a flash hider on the end of the barrel. And the new Colt, thankfully we can still get a reasonable facsimile. See, this new Colt does not have a flash hider, so somehow it is safer. It's okay for us to own one without flash hider. Is that not silly or what? These guns have had the bayonet lugs sawed off of them. Both of them have. They'd already done that earlier to the Colt Sporter here. Isn't that silly? Wonder how many people were bayoneted in the United States. Heck, you'd probably have to go back who knows how many years to even find one. It's preposterous. It's just silly. You know, suddenly, for some reason, this pistol grip to people like Dianne Feinstein and some of these other people who literally want to disarm us, this pistol grip makes this gun much more dangerous. That's silly. I mean, what in the world is a piece of plastic down here? We have models of guns now that are coming in with all kinds of stock configurations. They have wood all the way back here and got a thumb hole. It's just ridiculous on how a pistol grip could make a gun more dangerous or more deadly. Well, friends, let me tell you what it's all about. These people who want to socialize this country, and believe me, they've gone a long way. I mean, you look at some of these government programs, they've gone a long way toward socializing this country. But the people who are so desperate to do this know that as long as you and I, the average citizen, Mr. and Mrs. American public, have access to adequate weaponry, no, this is not a machine gun. No, it's not even close to it. As far as it works with one shot for one pull of the trigger. It's a semi-automatic gun. It is not a machine gun, but it is still an effective defensive weapon that we can have in our homes that all of us ought to be able to own if we hadn't been certified with some sort of chemical dependency problem. Or no, I'm not forgiving everyone in the insane asylums or everyone in prison who's been convicted of crimes of giving any sort of firearm to, but those of us who've never done anything wrong, who don't have a history of mental illness or mental instability, why couldn't we be able to own these? See, they know that they can never, the United Nations can never come in here with their one world government, their new world order, where all of us are, instead of American citizens, we're international citizens or world citizens. They know they can never come to your home or to my home and give us orders, because they're not going to come in and invade our homes and tell us what to do, take whatever that they want of ours that they can take as long as we have guns that we can stand up to them with. Because you know what? People will band together, friends, just like they did a couple of hundred years ago. Just like in so many revolutions in so many countries around the world, and our own being the most important, because what we fought for was a lasting freedom, a country that would go down through history as respecting the rights of its citizens rather than respecting the rights of the state. And that's what this is all about. That's why it is imperative that these people who want to socialize this country, who want to change our way of life, who want to literally order everything about our lives that we do every day, from the food we eat, to the car we drive, to the simple decisions that we make about ourselves, they want to control everything. Well, as long as we have these firearms, they can't do it. The cost is going to be too high. So that's what it's all about. It's not about taking flash hiders off. That was just a beginning. It's not about taking longer magazines. You know, even with a 10-round magazine, you know how long it takes to reload one of these guns? It takes that long. Even if you have 10 rounds to start with, it doesn't take long to reload them. So it's just a start to try and make this type of gun unacceptable to large numbers of the American public, so they'll say, yeah, that gun, that looks rough. And on television, of course, when you see this type of gun used, you never see it in a semi-automatic, in, say, one of the TV dramas or TV, if you want to call them that, programs, some of the mysteries or whatever else. You never see these on semi-auto. They're always machine guns. It's like everybody on the street that has one of these, to those people in the public who are not informed, they think we've all got machine guns. We have a black gun that looks like this, because that's how they're portrayed in the popular or larger media sources. They're all well, they're not machine guns. And you know, the laws regulating machine guns have been very effective. There hasn't the history of machine gun misuse is almost non-existent. So it's just a sham to try and literally, because they have to take them away. They have to do it. The socialists have to get these away from us. It's not just these. They've got to get handguns too, because believe me, you can take even a single action Super Black Hawk. You can hit targets at a couple of 100 yards, make a pretty good stand on one of these. But they have to disarm us before their policy of one world or / new world order, one world government, their policy of literally worldwide slavery can go into effect. We can't be armed if they're going to get this done. It's our job to be sure that that never happens.
Friends, we recently had the chance to visit with Woody Jenkins, a very fine state legislator here in Louisiana, who's running for the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate. And I think you're going to enjoy some of the things that Woody has to say about himself and about what he wants to do.
Now, this is a great country we live in. I know that from personal experience. My dad was badly injured and wounded in World War II, and he and my mother arrived in Baton Rouge with $20 in their pockets in the late 1940s. And they were able to rent a little house that we lived in. It was about 600 square feet, sort of a cracker box, my daddy called it. Cost about $20 a month. And he became more and more disabled as time went along, and was not able to work full time. And so I began to work in high school and worked my way through college, and that was a great experience for me. I met my wife Diane in high school, and while we were in college, we took $300 in our savings and started in business for ourselves, and that became successful. And about 10 years ago, we got into the business of the television industry, and we've developed a successful station there in Baton Rouge. The Lord has really blessed us with our 4 children and all of the things that we've enjoyed. We've been living the American dream. And today we think it's time to pay back the people of this state that we love so much. And that's why I'm delighted to be able to announce to you today that I will be a candidate for the Republican nomination for the United States Senate from the state of Louisiana this year.
What's your position on the preservation of the Second Amendment?
Well, the Second Amendment to me is one of the most important parts of the Constitution. In fact, there's a little saying that I believe in, that we have several protections for our liberty. We have the ballot box, the soap box, the jury box, and if all else fails, the cartridge box. And to me, the Second Amendment was intended for us to be able to defend ourselves against foreign invaders and against criminals and even a government that might go wrong. And it's an integral part of our heritage and our life, and it's an integral part of protecting my family. Well, the first thing that we need to tell you, wherever you are in America, is you need to come to Louisiana to do your hunting and fishing, because we have some of the best in the world. And you're going to find a people here who are not opposed to those things. We are for those things. That's what we love. We believe in the right to keep it and bear arms, and you're going to have a very friendly environment. You're going to love to come here, because this is the place to be. When it comes to the right to keep and bear arms, you can see that what we're going to do this year in the legislature is we're going to pass the gun carry law. We're going to give our law-abiding citizens the right to carry concealed weapons for their own personal protection and defense. And then what I want to do, Leroy, is get in that U.S. Senate and really start to repeal some of the onerous gun laws that we have, so that our Constitution is being respected, because it's really not. And I want to be sure that we don't have lawless law enforcement like we had at Ruby Ridge and Waco and some of those places where our citizens are abused by the very people who should be protecting their rights.
Would you be willing to accept campaign contributions from outside the state?
Absolutely. No gambling interests. We don't want them. And no corporate contributions, but honest, law-abiding American citizens, we will definitely accept it. It's Jenkins for Senate 1996 is the name of the committee. And
we'll see if we can get some for you.
Great. It's 910 North Foster, Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70806. We'd appreciate it, Leroy. We're going to win this thing, but we need your help.
Thank you, Woody.
Appreciate it.